On the afternoon of the 9th of July 2024, terror struck the quiet Hertfordshire town of Bushey. At around 2:30 p.m, a man named Kyle Clifford approached the Hunt family home. Hidden in his bag was a butcher's knife and a crossbow, part of a kill kit he had assembled days earlier. His target was not random. Inside that house lived his former girlfriend, Louise Hunt, and her family. Kyle had made sure that John Hunt, Louise's father, was away at work. John, a respected BBC racing commentator, was often heard live on racing days, a fact Kyle had confirmed before carrying out his plan. Armed with a knife, crossbow, duct tape, rope, and petrol, he was prepared for violence. When the doorbell rang, it was Carol Hunt, Louise's mother, who answered. Kyle lied, claiming he was returning Louise's belongings and had a card for the family. Within seconds of being let inside, Kyle stabbed her repeatedly. Carol collapsed near the entrance, fatally wounded. But Kyle did not flee. Instead, he dragged her out of sight and waited inside the home for over 30 minutes. At 3:07 p.m, he briefly left to retrieve a crossbow hidden in his car, then returned to lie in wait. By 4:11 p.m, Louise finished her work in the garden studio where she ran her dog grooming business. She walked into the house, unaware of what awaited her. Almost instantly, her screams rang out. Neighbours later described the sound of prolonged screaming and male shouting. Kyle overpowered her, binding her arms and feet with duct tape and gagging her. For hours, he tortured and violated her, holding her captive. At 5:30 p.m, Kyle used Louise's phone to text her father, pretending to be her, inquiring when he'd return home. He also searched online for how to disable smoke detectors, suggesting he considered burning the house to erase evidence. Minutes later, Louise's sister Hannah Hunt arrived. With her approaching, Kyle shot Louise with a crossbow bolt at close range, killing her to prevent her from calling for help. Moments later, Hannah stepped inside. She saw blood, signs of a struggle, and then came face to face with Kyle. She texted her boyfriend to call the police but was quickly restrained and shot in the chest. Even while mortally wounded, Hannah managed a final act of extraordinary bravery. She discovered her mother's and sister's bodies, let out a scream of anguish, and summoning her last strength dialed 999. Barely able to breathe, she told the operator that she, her mother and her sister had been shot, and gave her address before the line went dead. At 7 p.m, armed response units stormed the Hunt home. Carol and Louise were already dead. Hannah was barely alive but succumbed to her injuries shortly after. The violence left 3 women dead in a calculated act of misogyny and control. Within minutes, police named Kyle Clifford, Louise's ex-boyfriend, as their prime suspect. CCTV had caught him fleeing. Hannah's text and a dying 999 call confirmed his identity. Hertfordshire police launched a manhunt supported by the Metropolitan Police. A public alert warned citizens that Clifford was armed and dangerous. By 7:30 p.m, Kyle had abandoned his car and vanished into woodland and a cemetery near Hilly Fields, Enfield. For almost 22 hours, he evaded capture, hiding among undergrowth and graves. Police searched relentlessly through the night and day. On the evening of the 10th of July 2024, armed officers cornered him. Rather than surrender, Kyle turned the crossbow on himself, firing a bolt into his chest. It left him paralysed from the chest down. Officers disarmed him and rushed him to hospital. The manhunt was over. To many, the brutality of Kyle's crimes seemed inexplicable, but his past hinted at instability, violence, and entitlement. Born the 5th of April, 1998 in Enfield, Kyle grew up in a close family as the third of 4 children. Outwardly, his upbringing was normal. Yet at school, teachers described him as unpredictable, sometimes violent. Some classmates saw him as a bully, though others insisted he seemed normal and even friendly. In his mid-teens, around 2012 to 2013, he first drew police attention for petty crimes, possession of cannabis, minor assault, and theft. No charges stuck, but the incidents foreshadowed his future. Kyle's family life was also scarred by tragedy. His brother, Bradley Clifford, was jailed for life in 2018 after killing a motorcyclist in a road rage attack. At 21, Kyle joined the British Army in 2019, enlisting in the Queen's Dragoon Guards, but he proved a poor fit for military discipline. He spent over 250 days on sick leave and left in 2022 without completing a tour. Former colleagues described him as immature, with a chip on his shoulder. Back in civilian life, he drifted through short-lived jobs, including catering, where he faced allegations of inappropriate conduct. His relationships fared no better. He remained unmarried and childless, craving admiration but unable to sustain stability. In 2023, he met Louise Hunt on Bumble. Louise, born in 1999, was the youngest daughter of John and Carol Hunt. She was described as kind, devoted to animals, and had built a thriving dog grooming business. For 8 months, she dated Kyle, introducing him to her family. But by June 2024, Louise ended the relationship. Friends later revealed she feared his temper. Kyle, meanwhile, was unfaithful and openly misogynistic, reportedly influenced by online figures like Andrew Tate. Rejected and humiliated, he spiraled into rage. Within days, he plotted revenge. He purchased rope, petrol, and a £350 crossbow online. He studied the Hunt family's routines and waited until John Hunt was away at work. On 9th July, he enacted his plan. Kyle survived his self-inflicted injury but was left paralysed. In September 2024, he was interrogated from a wheelchair. He remained emotionless, refusing to answer questions. At trial, he declined to attend proceedings, showing no remorse. In March 2025, Kyle Clifford finally pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder. Even then, he attempted to cling to some shred of denial, rejecting responsibility for the sexual assault of Louise, despite the DNA evidence that proved otherwise. His silence in interrogation, his refusal to attend his own trial, and his lack of remorse throughout the proceedings painted the portrait of a man incapable of empathy, remorse, or even acknowledgement of the lives he destroyed. On 11th of March 2025, the judge delivered a sentence as severe as the crimes themselves. 3 whole life orders. Clifford will never leave prison. He will never breathe free air again. His name will be remembered not as a soldier, a son, or a partner, but as the Crossbow Killer, a man whose violence, cowardice, and obsessive misogyny cost 3 women their lives. But to view this story solely through the lens of Clifford's evil would be to miss its most powerful truth. This is not his story alone. This is the story of Carol, Louise, and Hannah Hunt, a mother and her daughters, each remembered for their kindness, their ambitions, and their joy. Carol was a devoted mother and wife, described as gentle and giving. Louise was a young woman building a thriving business, passionate about animals and adored by her community. Hannah was fiercely loyal to her family, and in her final moments, she displayed a courage so profound that it will echo long after Clifford's name has faded. Hannah's last act, dialing 999 with a crossbow bolt lodged in her chest, struggling to give her address while drowning in her own blood, was an act of bravery that changed the course of the investigation. In that moment, she not only tried to save her family, but she ensured that their killer would be caught. It is this legacy of strength, love, and courage that should endure, not the cowardice of the man who sought to destroy them.